This real life drama is so crazy, it's hard to believe it's real, but you guys can contest to it because it is your story, all right? And if you want to submit a story to You're on my channel, it is linked in every description of every video ever. So it's open. I've been keeping it open. We're receiving lots of good stories. First one wants to be kept anonymous. I got a call from a coworker late one night around 9 p.m. She was crying and in a panic because her husband came home with a bad work injury. He had slashed his thumb open and arrived home with blood oozing out of it. Ugh. He had gone into shock and she needed some support as she was rushing him to the nearest ER, which was in my town. I met them at the hospital. Husband gets a boatload of stitches and was basically high as a kite on medication and shock. We stop in at the local McDonald's to grab food because, well, why not, right? I have PTSD and I'm always on edge, keeping an eye on my surroundings and basically ultra careful around strangers as a result. We're sitting eating our food when I see this woman acting strung out and odd wandering down the street. I don't mention anything because my workmate was touchy and tended to overreact, making up scenarios and would go over the top if I mentioned it. So I just watch this woman. She keeps stumbling around and looking over her shoulder constantly. She crosses the street and comes into the McDonald's via a side street entrance and sits in a corner and keeps looking around like someone is going to get her. My spidey senses are on full alert. And I start getting really nervous. Again, I just watched. After 10 minutes, she gets up and I see a freaking large, almost 3-foot axe handle sticking out of her jacket. This is not where I saw a story going. The head of the axe is on a tiny handbag she has over her shoulder. I gasped and watched her get up and quickly leave. I got up to go to the checkout and said, you need to call the police. That woman that just walked out has an axe and looks high as a kite. Turns out the checkout had noticed her too. So they talk to the manager, she talks to me, and before the doors all get bolted closed, the woman walks back in and walks out again. Cops called, doors locked. Well, the woman comes back yanking on the door. Idiot worker steps in. He's been out back and missed everything. We started yelling, no, leave the door closed. He ignored us and lets her in. She's not alone. Her drugged out boyfriend appears too. He starts chasing her. The manager is in the middle of the floor on the phone with the cops. They start running around in circles. Drugged out girlfriend and boyfriend are yelling and swearing at each other, threatening to each other. The manager is cropping herself. Workers are hiding. We're sitting there still trying to act invisible. Cops arrive 20 minutes later, 7 cars, weapons out, dog handlers coming. Boyfriend and girlfriend start trying to escape. Boyfriend gets out and stands to be arrested. Girlfriend bolts. Cops chase her up the street, still trying to get the axe out of her bag. It took 8 police officers about 20 minutes to get a strung out 5'3" woman in cuffs and in the car. We got questioned and asked to leave so the McDonald's could close. Nobody believed us the next day. Nothing made the papers. No mention of it online. No proof of evidence. A total WTF moment. Insane. That's insane. I'm just glad everyone is safe, to be honest, because that could have been horrible. No one believes the story, but luckily it is in the newspaper. You can probably find the newspaper online somewhere. But someone gave birth inside the bathroom of the Tim Hortons that I was working at. I'm pretty sure she was from the United States and she came across the border to Windsor and she was in the bathroom. And one of my employees, I think her name is Pat, helped gather paper towel, cloth things and helped her in the bathroom as she was giving birth. I bet you could find the article online. Next story was submitted by Jay. Blind man's roommate story. He put a weapon to my head. Oh my gosh, why are all these stories so violent, you guys? Oh my gosh. This happened in the year 2000. Warning, this contains mention of a weapon and severe depression. I, male, when I was 22, got an apartment with my male coworker. I've been blind since the age of 2 and living on my own since I was 19. With help from the local department for the blind, I got a job in a call center when I was 18. When I was 20, I became good friends with a male coworker who was a year younger than me. He had joined the Army Reserves when he was 18. Because of this, people in the early online community from other branches of the military would drop the R from the Army and call him Amy. I will call him Amy here as it always pissed him off. Amy was the equivalent of a corporal in the U.S. Army Reserves. He was also a drummer in his Pentecostal church choir. We would often hang out at a local privately owned Christian coffee shop. I was Catholic, but I would often attend his church and became friends with several members of the church. When I was 21, I wished for some more self-independence. I got an apartment with Amy. Knowing him for over a year and several members of his church, I felt like I could trust Amy. I was making good money and enjoyed getting a bunch of stuff I'd always wanted when I was a kid. Lego kits, laser tag, comic book action figures, etc. At the time, my father was helping me with all the print stuff that came with life. Things like banking, taxes, investments, etc. My father was annoyed at the amount of money I was spending on what he thought was needless and childish junk. I was very good at living within my means, so purchasing toys was not a financial issue. It always helped me learn what things like Voltron, flying saucers, Wolverine, etc. looked like. You know, people I would never even think of that, which is so sad that all these characters that you love so much, you're just visualizing, and then you get to actually hold it in your hand and kind of feel their characteristics and their facial features and stuff like that. Wow, I'm so happy you're sharing that with us. I still don't understand what my dad's problem was with me buying all sorts of fun stuff. I could afford it, no problem. I was tired of explaining why I was spending so much on, junk, gambling, whatever. So I made an agreement with Amy. Since I was more responsible with my finances than Amy, I would pay for about 60% of the bills, and Amy would help me with my banking and credit card payments. Stupid of me, yes, but we had been good friends for over a year, and he was so involved with his church. I thought there would be no problem. We spent so much time together and our personalities were so similar that people were often surprised to hear that we were not brothers. Amy's father would often lecture him on his own expenses, so I would often buy much of the things that Amy wanted and he would pay me back later. As we were under the same roof, I was in no hurry for him to pay me back, as I had managed to have enough savings that I was not worried about it. And I understood that many had issues with living within their means for the first time or so once they were out on their own. I had been living on my own for almost 3 years, and Amy was on his own for the first time. After several months, Amy had worked up quite a bit of debt to me, over $1,000. I've always been easygoing, and knowing Amy well and seeing how he acted in his church, I figured he would pay me back whenever he got around to it. After all, I knew where he lived. Over the months, I started to notice little things. I thought I had a certain amount of money in my wallet, and in a jar that I kept some money that was meant specifically for just fun. I would usually keep my wallet with me, but I would often leave it with my personal computer, as I needed my talking computer for work, and it had all of my personal informations, notes, etc. I could just grab the computer knowing my wallet was right there. But I began to notice that I was sometimes a bit short on cash. Often, I would miscount how many 5s, 10s, 20s I had in my wallet, something I occasionally still do today. I could have sworn I had 5 10s or 4 20s, but sometimes I do count a bill twice. Since I was financially responsible, aside from the miscounting, I never really worried about it. Oh, I only have 4 20s, I could have sworn I had 5 20s. Then sometimes I would drop my wallet and I would find a couple of bills on the floor later. It all worked out in the end, but when my dad and brother would help me with some of the more strictly visual things with taxes, financial statements, etc., they began asking me about some financial discrepancies. Then one day, maybe a month after I started being more insistent on Amy doing something to pay me back, he called me one time when he was out. 2 of his tires had blown and he had forgotten his wallet at home. About a week earlier, my dad had mentioned to Amy that all of his tires were looking a bit bald. Amy was annoyed by this, saying later that his tires were fine. I'm blind. I have no idea what tires look like when it is time to get them replaced. I had forgotten my personal computer and wallet in his car after we got home from work. I hadn't worried about it. His car was in our apartment's garage. I could get my computer and or wallet anytime, so it wasn't urgent. Amy apologized profusely and said he needed to pay for the tow truck and new tires, and assured me that he would that weekend pay me back along with a good portion of the money he already owed me. I'm pissed already. Amy's taking advantage of you and I'm pissed. Reluctantly, my dumbass gave him the PIN to my ATM card. No. Amy told me how much he had taken out and paid me back that weekend along with a couple of hundreds towards what he had already owed me. Okay, all right. A week later, my dad was helping me organize my accounts and he saw the large withdrawal from when Amy had his car trouble. I told my dad what had happened and he was rather less than pleased. Then, shortly after cursing out the dumb kid for not doing anything about his obviously balding tires, he noticed that the amount withdrawn was more than 3 times what Amy had told me. I knew it. I knew that was too good to be true that he paid you back. When I confronted Amy about this, he told me that he had seen the balance of the ATM account and it would be easier if he just got 4 new tires in case the other 2 were about to blow. Weird, since he had been so adamant that all 4 of his tires had been fine. Now 2 had blown and he was buying 4 brand new tires with my ATM credit card. After this, I gave my dad the security information he would need to fully access my account. My dad noticed that there were several other discrepancies. I was paying for 60% of the rent and apartment bills, but there were multiple checks written from my account that paid for much more than 60% of the rent and bills. And why had I paid for Amy's car insurance? Why had I paid for a computer device that I literally could not use with my talking computer, etc.? It was about the time that Amy was fired from our call center. Since both our names were on the lease, I would have to pick up all the bills for at least 1 month. Now more than a bit irritated, I confronted Amy. He told me that he must have accidentally filled out some of my checks when he had been filling out some of his own. Okay, bologna sandwich, because I can't swear on here. And that when I was signing for part of my bills, that he must have just gotten confused and accidentally had me sign the checks that he was accidentally filling out in my checkbook instead of his. That is such a dumb, it's not even a good lie. Amy would always fill out checks for me. Okay, I can imagine how someone who is paying bills one after another is filling out their checkbook and the blind man's checkbook at the same time might get the books and or amounts mixed up. I can see this happening once, maybe twice, but surely if that had happened, you would catch that you were doing that after a couple of checks. Nope, he just didn't notice that he had accidentally filled out several of my checks and had me pay for some of his stuff. And he accidentally had me pay for almost all of some of the bills. I told Amy that no one could make that many honest mistakes. He still owed me several $100s from when I had previously loaned him money. I told him that the evidence was overwhelming and his excuses were sounding ridiculously stupid. Because of his accidents, my checking account was nearly empty. I literally didn't even have enough to cover even half, let alone 60% of the rent. He would have to cover the upcoming rent entirely on his own. He assured me that this would be no problem, but since he was covering the entire rent, he would not be able to pay me back his scheduled amount on his initial debt. I explained to my apartment management that there might be a delay in my payment for the month. They told me that they understood, but rules were rules and I would still need to pay a late fee as both our names were on the lease. I told Amy that he was going to be the one that picked up the late charge. He said sure, but he just didn't have the money right then and that he would give it to me next paycheck. I told him absolutely not, that I was still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but that he had truly been just incredibly stupid and careless, but if he couldn't dig himself out of the hole that he had dug. That as this was now going to affect my renter's history and mess up my credit score, I would have no choice but to go to the police. He assured me that was not necessary. I said fine, but if he didn't pay me back fully by the next week, I would tell his pastor that Amy needed help and that maybe he shouldn't be counseling at his church summer camp. I had met several of those kids and I liked them. Amy was becoming more and more angry as my father and I kept finding financial accidents. How dare I accuse him of robbery, fraud, etc. He kept trying to convince me that people made accidents like writing the wrong amount, grabbing the wrong checkbooks, etc. We went back and forth. I started always locking my bedroom door and I started carrying a knife with me at all times. I was 5'3" and about 120 pounds at the time. He was 5'9" and close to 200 pounds and had training from the army. I knew there was no way I was going to win a fight, but I was going to do whatever I could to at least try to defend myself. Amy was becoming more and more angry as I kept accusing him and threatening to at least warn some people in his church. That was stupid. I really should not have told him that I was thinking of doing that. My mom was now begging me to move out, but I could not move out and take all my stuff to my parents' house. Amy had previously broken my lazy boy and some of my electronics. I knew that if I had just left, I would most likely be writing off a lot of stuff that I did not want to have to lose and or replace. As I started separating myself as much as I could, and Amy had overheard me telling some friends of mine what was going on. One of these friends worked at the same call center that we did, though Amy no longer worked there. His only income was from the Army Reserves. Amy had been watching some Dirty Harry-like movie when he overheard me telling my friend from work about the situation. Trying to get back into our formal buddy-buddy interaction, he'd been trying to get me to come out of my room and watch movies with him. Why? I have no idea. With the Dirty Harry-like movie playing in the background, Amy went to get his duffel bag where he kept his stuff for the reserves. He was going to be leaving that weekend for his monthly training. He came back from his bag and he put his service weapon to my head, asking in the movie tone, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" By that time, I had been battling depression for almost a decade. I'd come very close more than once to leaving early to meet St. Peter and find out which of our faiths, if any of them, was the right one. I had seen his weapon before and he'd shown me what the bullets looked like. I just went very still. I knew I couldn't take him in a one-on-one fight. I did have my knife on me, but not in easy reach, and there was a little issue of the muzzle against my forehead. I just thought, well, if now's the time, then it's the time. But I figured that disposing of my body and explaining to our mutual friends and my family where I'd gone would be a bit of a problem for him. So I just told him calmly, go ahead, pull the effing trigger. Amy jerked back as if I had slapped him, and with a nervous laugh said something like, "Hey man, calm down. It's just a line from the movie. See here?" And he took my hand and put it on the butt of the weapon. See, it was just the back of it. I never actually pointed at you. I told him it didn't matter. He knew damn well you don't do anything like that with a firearm. No! He had by now stepped back and the weapon was out of my reach. I then just did the dumbest thing of my life and I did not call 911. I don't remember exactly why. I think I was figuring it was basically my word against his. He had a good reputation with his church and apparently a good record with the reserves. I actually felt a bit safer after that. If he had been going to cure my depression, he likely would have done it then. That is when I decided to eat the loss and move in with my parents. My dad rented a storage room for me and I took all of my stuff out in 2 days. Amy somehow got some money when I moved out and he gave me an envelope with $2,000 in it. It wasn't everything that he owed me, but it was about all of what I could prove. My mom was now terrified and I was worried that Amy might decide to find a nice place to hide bodies and decide to come after me or my parents. I had always enjoyed working at night and mostly sleeping during the day. I would be away from Amy and I could be awake to hear if anything weird started happening outside my parents' house. There were a bit more tricks Amy tried to pull and I know I ended up losing at least $1,500 in that experience. But my mom was desperate to move on and not to risk further making him angry. No idea what happened to Amy after that. I've tried Googling his name a few times, but I've never found very much. I can only hope that he didn't cause any harm to anyone else or was caught and arrested. That's insane. I am so glad you got out of there. You got some of your money back and that you are okay. And I'm happy you're still here with us. And I hope you know that. I really do. Alrighty then, before we get to the next one, we're hopping on hydration station. Drink your beverage of choice, but I will encourage water. Cheers. That was not a good lip gloss pour. Next story is coming in from Leah. When Lying Dave met Karma and me. This all happened 15 years ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday, mostly because the whole thing felt like a live episode of The Office mixed with a crime thriller minus the crime. At the time, I, female 22, was a receptionist and my boyfriend, 25 male, worked in IT at the same company. Our office was split across 2 floors and 4 rooms, but lucky us. We were in the same room downstairs, which meant lots of flirty chats and very little actual productivity. One day after work, I was heading to his place when he surprised me with 3D movie tickets at his local cinema. Sweet, right? It was about an hour away from the office, so it felt like a mini adventure. We got there early and decided to grab a drink at the cinema's bar, which, plot twist, was packed like it was the last bar on Earth. As we were looking around for a table, who did we see? Dave, 19, male, a new guy from work. We didn't know him well, just the usual hey in the hallways, but there he was, beer in hand with his girlfriend. Odd, considering he lived 5 minutes from a different cinema. But hey, maybe he liked overpriced popcorn and long commutes. I caught his eye, smiled, gave a friendly little wave, and I started to walk over to say hi like the polite human I am. And that's when he hit us with the death glare of the century.
Death glare of the century.
Like, if glares could kill, we would both be on cold slabs labeled victims of excessive eye contact. My boyfriend and I literally stopped mid-step. Dave looked at his girlfriend, then back at us, and then turned the glare up to level 10. I half expected lasers. Trying to shake it off, we retreated to the bar, sipped our drinks, and pretended we weren't being cursed from across the room. I tried to focus on my cocktail, but every time I glanced up, there they were, Dave and his girlfriend, serving us more stink eye than a disgruntled cat. Eventually, we escaped to our movie seats. But because the universe has a sense of humor, guess who walked in to see the exact same movie? Yep, Dave and his girlfriend. And guess whose seats were just 2 rows in front of ours? Karma, ya old dog. Thankfully, they didn't notice us during the movie. But I couldn't enjoy it. I kept running the whole thing over in my head like I was trying to crack the Zodiac code. Had I offended him? Did he think we were after his table? Did I unknowingly insult his haircut? The next morning at work, during my cigarette break, I chatted with 2 friends from upstairs. One of whom, Haley, 19 female, sat right across from Dave. I casually asked, hey, has Dave ever said anything about me or my boyfriend? She gave me that confused look, like I had just asked if squirrels could vote. So I told her the story. Her jaw dropped. Then she laughed and said, oh, I know exactly why he was acting like that. Apparently our boy Dave had been calling in sick left and right. So sick, he couldn't get out of bed. The day before, yep, he called in too ill to function. Oh.
Salmon skin roll.
Yeah, there he was, drinking a beer and watching a 3D blockbuster an hour from home. Why? Because he specifically avoided his local cinema to not get caught. Oops. I went back to my desk feeling like Sherlock Holmes. Mystery solved, case closed, except no. Turns out Haley hated Dave. Between the sick days, the lateness, the complaining, and the general human version of a paper cut energy that he brought to work, she was over it. So she marched straight to their manager Pete and spilled the tea. All of it. About 20 minutes later, Pete called me upstairs for a quick chat, which is corporate for this is about to get awkward. He asked me to confirm what Haley had said. I panicked a little, but the truth was already out, and if I stayed quiet, Haley could get in trouble. So I spilled the beans, the bar, the beer, the movie, the murderous glares, everything. Pete just nodded, smiled, and said, thank you. I sat back at my desk feeling like I had just kicked a puppy. I didn't mean to get anyone in trouble. Honestly, if Dave had just come clean at the bar and whispered, please don't tell anybody that I'm not sick, we would have zipped our lips and gone on our way. But alas, then it got worse. Or better. 15 minutes later, Dave sent an email to both me and my boyfriend from his work account. It was a masterpiece of rage, profanity, and poor decision making. He called me a stupid, said I should keep my fat effing nose out of his business, and threatened to bash my head in. Charming. Any guilt I had, vaporized into dust. I turned to my boyfriend and asked, did you get this? He nodded. I told him not to reply. Then I smiled, hit forward, and sent it straight to Pete with a bow on top. Pete replied, thanks, I'll handle it. Haley told me Pete immediately summoned Dave to his office. She said the yelling could be heard through the walls. Dave apparently tried to deny sending the email, despite, sending it from his official work Gmail account. Genius. Within the hour, Dave was packing up his desk and being escorted out of the building by 2 male coworkers. I guess threatening to bash in your colleague's skull isn't a strong career move. We never saw him again. So yeah, next time you think about lying to your boss and then rage emailing your coworkers, maybe just use the sick day to stay at home and keep your death glares to yourself, because karma, she reads email. And to think they could have just said hi. They could have just said hi to you in the movie theater. Really? Or said hey and be like, oh, I called in sick, I am feeling a bit better. I would appreciate it if you didn't tell anyone. Anything. Anything would have helped. Next one wants to be, okay, it says anonymous, but you also put a name too. So I'm going to keep it anonymous just in case. Better safe than sorry. I suggest all women who date to run background checks on men, no matter how innocent they appear. I, 26 female, met a man, 35, while I was working at a small town utility district. And by small town, I mean less than 500 people in the area. He was a little older than me, but he did not look like that at all. I'd been going through a divorce, and my coworker, who worked in the office across the street, was also my notary for my divorce. Brought my papers over, and that led to him finding out about my divorce. I had been separated for 8 months, and once it was signed, I waited for it to clear. All I could think of was ridding myself of my ex-husband who had wasted everything given to us by both our poor families, and him wasting it on cars and expensive motorcycles versus our basic housing needs. And yes, I worked. He took my money and watched every damn mile on my car. If I was 1 mile over, I got food taken away. So when the new guy, who was charming and more mature, showed up at my work, better believe I fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. We dated fast and furious. It was like a novel. Passionate, steamy, and never dull. I fell hard, and so did he. He kept trying to talk to me into having kids with him, and I wasn't going to have kids. That was not my plan at all. And after about 2 years of dating him, I changed my mind, and I got pregnant. I wanted us to be a family together, and so did he. That was my dream, he said. Not long after that, I figured out he was married, and he had been trying to get her to leave him. After my kids were born, I found out, I found out I had cancer and I couldn't go back to work. So now I'm in limbo. I've been raising my kids 80% on my own, all because I didn't know he was married. He hid it all. There were no signs at all. And when I tell you this man is smart, he is one of those that turned down positions from 3-letter agencies after his service in the military because he didn't want Uncle Sam watching his every move. I really wasn't looking for advice now. My kids are teenagers. Oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened to you though. And I hope you're okay. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're recovering. Oh, my heart. I just want to hug you guys. I want to hug all of you guys. I really do. Let me know your thoughts on this, you guys. Be respectful as you guys sent these stories in. You'll probably be in the comment section. All right? Stay classy out there. Stay sassy.